Thank you, John. People are lined up to ask questions. This is the way we've been doing it all day. And if you'll state your name and where you're from. You did a very good job of summarizing, even though you weren't here. A lot of what we heard.
Well, I thought some of those points might have been made, yes, right.
So I'm Kelly Sullivan. I'm with the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, and I definitely appreciated your comments about propagating the understanding that not all experiments succeed. The struggle that I've had, and I'm hoping that you have some good ideas on this, is how do we learn to appropriately celebrate courageous failure?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. My friend and mentor Bob Frosch has thought a lot about this, and I worked with Bob at Harvard for a number of years in the Science, Technology, and Policy program, and Bob always argued that you have to evaluate research on a portfolio basis and look at the successes of the portfolio rather than assigning credit or blame to the success or failure of individual pieces. And I think that's one approach. You find ways to recognize portfolios that are succeeding with the help of failures embedded in them. But I don't have a lot of original insight on that question. It's a tough one.
Okay. So in all your travels, you mentioned internationally that we still look good for accepting success. Have you seen any where there's some really good centers or ideas that going forward that we can learn from?
Well, other countries are also doing the multi-interdisciplinary centers. I think I've been going to China at least once a year since 1984, and of course the transformation there has been stunning. About every 2 years I go to Tsinghua, the MIT of China, and I was a visiting professor at Tsinghua for a couple of years before I took this job. And they're doing some extraordinary things with multi and interdisciplinary centers in biotech, in infotech, in transportation technology, in the BP Energy Environment and Economy Center, the EEE Center, and other institutions in China are doing some of the same thing. I've just come back from South Korea, where I was last week. You go to KAIST, the Korea Advanced Institute for Science and Technology, which I think of as sort of the MIT of Korea. And again, they have centers that are working in this way, that are drawing on engineering, life science, computer science, social science together. But again, it's interesting that they still see us as the leaders. And one of the things that I find particularly interesting in going around the world to these other countries, and we talk, among other things, about STEM education. And in the United States, we do a tremendous amount of hand-wringing about the number of countries that eat our lunch when it comes to the standardized tests on mathematics and science. And it turns out that while we're wringing our hands on how they do so well and we do so badly on the standardized tests, they're wringing their hands about how we instill so much creativity and innovativeness and entrepreneurship in our students. And they're always asking me, can I advise them as to how they can improve their educational system to generate the sort of creativity and entrepreneurship that ours seems to kick out effortlessly. Of course, it's not really effortless, and we could do better in some of the ways that I talked about and I know you've been talking about here. There's one over there. Yep, please. At the mic?
At the mic.
I'm Naomi Weber with Lewis Burke Associates, and thank you very much for your comments. In the examples you gave of the multi and interdisciplinary centers, they were all very mission-driven. I'm wondering if you could just say what you think the role of the NSF centers should be going forward, in that they're investigator-driven, they don't have this top-down mission.
Well, first of all, again, in basic research as well as in applied research, it is becoming more and more true that many of the most interesting possibilities are at the boundaries, are at the edges where different disciplines come together. And we're seeing these convergence institutes looking at the convergence of biology, information technology, and engineering. You have this wonderful symbiosis where engineering produces capabilities in terms of diagnostics and manipulation of materials that enable science to take new strides. And as science takes new strides, it enables engineering to incorporate those in a wonderful positive feedback. that works at the basic and fundamental level as well as it works at the applied level. So I'm all for it at all levels. I have to admit that I initially, in the press of time, only decided at 10 o'clock last night that I probably should use some slides in this presentation, and I drew on what I had at my fingertips. But one could make an hour talk out of this with other dimensions, including more focus at the fundamental level.
Hossein Mahmoud, Colorado State University. One of the issues with STEM education, I have 3 little girls, by the way, so this is very close to my heart topic. The youngest is only 9 months old, so I'm working on configuring her brain to be an engineer already. But one of the problems that I see is not only including STEM education within a multidisciplinary research center, but how do you actually change the culture at home, the culture around the country, where boys are supposed to break things and put it back together, and girls are supposed to play with dolls? I mean, this is a fundamental issue that is not being addressed within sort of the home type of environment.
You know, it's funny that you should mention that, because there's been a symposium going on today at the White House about gender bias in toys. And how, by working with the kinds of toys we give to our kids, girls as well as boys, you can address some of that. I mean, you pointed out that, you know, the standard gender stereotype is the boys make and break things and the girls play with dolls, and we can fix that. I'm at the stage where I have a number of granddaughters. The youngest of my granddaughters is 11. The oldest of my granddaughters is 25. They are all interested in science, technology, engineering, and they were all given Legos and robot kits and radio kits as kids, and it works. I mean, parents can make an enormous difference in what their kids understand their opportunities to be. We're also, by the way, just to add one point, we have also been working with television producers and screenwriters to get more girls into science and engineering roles in TV programs, you know, including the kinds of stuff that kids watch. Please.
Hi, thanks for coming and meeting with us. So these the center-based engineering research at NSF is part of the foundation's portfolio that is more applied in a sense, and these are substantial investments. And I wonder if in your sort of internal policy discussions at OSTP, you've thought about how the foundation's basic research in engineering should be targeted and focused towards some of the other initiatives that you mentioned, like the IMIs and the Brain Initiative and any number of other areas. Would you think that NSF should take some piece of the ERCs and require them to feed into those other initiatives to help make them succeed?
My personal view is that the White House should not be doing a lot of steering of how the NSF allocates its resources. That view is not necessarily shared in some parts of OMB, the Office of Management and Budget. But, you know, I think we recruit fabulous people to lead NSF. We recruit fabulous people, many of them who come in on temporary assignments from other institutions to run the various programs. We supply from the White House some overall guidance every year in a letter that goes to the heads of all the departments and agencies from me and the OMB director. And that letter's like 5 or 6 single-space pages, and it says, here are priorities that the president is focused on and that we would like to see reflected somehow in your budget. But my folks certainly are inclined to give a lot of leeway, particularly to NSF, because of its mission and the kinds of people who are there and who are running it, to make the detailed decisions of how to allocate resources among those programs. And I was actually gratified to see a little bit of backing off on the part of the Congress from an excessive focus on sort of micromanagement in the budget lines from Congress of what NSF is supposed to do.
My name is Kirk Carlson. I just retired as the CEO of SRI International, across the street from where you lived for so many years.
Right.
First, I'd like to thank you for your service. We really appreciate that for all these years in many, many different ways, so thank you. I wanted to ask you about one of the things that I know is close to your heart. If you look around the United States, underrepresented boys in high school graduate at rates often between 35% and 50%. I consider it to be one of the most horrible problems we have. We have to somehow bring those young children into this world that we're talking about with such excitement here. Can you talk to us a little bit about, I know
Sure.
You've done lots of different things. Tell us a little bit more about
Yeah,
how we
I mean,
about that.
the phenomenon you're talking about is a huge waste of talent. It is a diminution of the talent pool of people who will go on to work in STEM fields and in innovation, and it is damaging to the individuals whose own career prospects are hobbled by the failure of the system to nurture them and bring them up in a way that enables them to succeed in these fields. We have been working on that problem from the beginning of this administration in a number of ways. We've worked with historically black colleges and universities. I visited in the course of my tenure in this position about half a dozen of the historically black colleges and universities. And one of the things that they're doing, which is, I think, very successful, is they are reaching down into the high schools and the middle schools from these extraordinary colleges and universities that have exciting laboratories, that have exciting research, that are developing innovations that matter in the community. And they're basically inspiring young people and mentoring them, identifying the promising young kids and mentoring them. We have the program called Educate to Innovate, which the president launched in November of 2009, which has now attracted nearly $1 billion in philanthropic and corporate support, a substantial part of which is having working scientists, engineers, mathematicians from national laboratories, from companies, from universities, spend part of their time working with K through 12 teachers in the classroom, not just to enrich the curriculum and enrich the content and make plain what exciting and interesting things go on in engineering and technology and innovation, but who serve as role models. That is, we have particularly worked to get women, African American, Hispanic scientists and engineers and technologists into classrooms so that kids can see that people who look like them can have these exciting careers. And that's really, I think, been growing in its effectiveness.
Well, I think we have time for one last question.
Thank you. Mike Gregory, until recently looking after the Institute for Manufacturing at Cambridge University in the UK. We've been pursuing the rather crazy agenda that there might be things that engineers and economists might learn from each other. Do you think there are such possibilities? And if so, how might that conversation be supported? And who does it well in the US?
Well, absolutely. I have been working with economists since 1970 myself. I've learned a lot from economists. I hope they've learned a little bit from me. And by the way, I have a background in both engineering and physics, and consider myself a hybrid. And we, in the programs I've mentioned, the academic programs I mentioned, the Energy and Resources Group at Berkeley, Technology and Policy at MIT, Engineering and Public Policy at Carnegie Mellon, all of those programs have economists in their core faculty. And that symbiosis has been very effective. So I'm all for it. When I mentioned at the beginning that we have to understand multidisciplinary engineering to include physical science, life science, and social science, certainly economists are included. I've learned things from anthropologists in the interdisciplinary programs that I've been involved in, from political scientists, from sociologists. There's tremendous further potential for the interplay among those disciplines. And I do have to apologize. I now have to run to another event at the State Department, but I appreciate everybody being here. I love the topic, and I look forward to reading about the conclusions you've reached.
Thank you, John. Well, we've all had a long day, and I want to thank all of you for your active participation, both during the panel's speakers, the questionnaires, and then during your breakout sections. And so we've sort of come to the end of the formal agenda. Just so to remind you that there will be a report out summarizing this symposium, which will come out next September. And then our committee's report will come out about a year from now. So, and then there's a reception upstairs on the 3rd floor at the atrium that for all of you to attend to, where there will be some refreshments and then chance to socialize again. That will start now until 6 o'clock. So again, thank all of you very much. Appreciate it.